I feel the power of the Lord.
Stop! Don't touch me! Who do you think you are? I am sorry, sister. I only want to help.
In the heart of Lagos, Nigeria, Pastor Samuel was famous for his powerful crusades and dramatic miracles. Every Sunday, hundreds of worshippers filled the massive church auditorium dressed in elegant Ankara gowns, lace wrappers, shining shoes, and expensive native outfits. People traveled from different states believing the pastor carried divine healing power. Among the church members was a wealthy businesswoman named Amoka Okre. At 38 years old, Amoka owned several successful fashion stores across Lagos Island and Victoria Island. Despite her wealth, she remained humble, calm, and deeply spiritual. She believed strongly in prayer, wisdom, and listening carefully to God. Every church service followed the same pattern. Pastor Samuel would invite people forward for special prayers. One after another, he touched their foreheads aggressively, causing them to collapse dramatically onto the floor while the congregation shouted excitedly. But Amoka never joined them. Whenever the pastor approached her during prayer sessions, she politely stepped backward. At first, people ignored her behavior. Soon, whispers began spreading throughout the church. Why does she refuse the pastor's touch? Some women questioned suspiciously. Others accused her of pride because of her wealth. One Sunday afternoon, Pastor Samuel stopped directly before Amoka during service. "Daughter," he announced loudly while holding the microphone, "why do you resist the anointing?" The entire church turned toward her. Amoka smiled respectfully. "Pastor, I believe God can speak quietly to the heart without force," she replied calmly. An uncomfortable silence filled the auditorium. Pastor Samuel forced a smile, but anger flashed briefly inside his eyes. That night, while praying alone in her bedroom, Amoka felt a strange warning deep within her spirit. Something inside the church was terribly wrong. Days passed after the uncomfortable church confrontation, but Amoka could not ignore the warning growing inside her spirit. Every time Pastor Samuel preached passionately about holiness and sacrifice, something felt unnatural beneath his words. One evening, Amoka visited the church unexpectedly to drop off supplies for an upcoming charity program. As she walked quietly through the empty hallways, she heard strange voices coming from the pastor's private office. Curious, she moved closer carefully. Inside the office, Pastor Samuel spoke harshly with two church elders. "The wealthy members must remain loyal," he warned seriously. "Without their money, everything collapses." Amoka frowned immediately. Suddenly, another voice spoke nervously. "What about the woman who disappeared after the last fasting program?" The room became silent briefly. Pastor Samuel answered coldly. "She asked too many questions. Forget about her." Fear rushed through Amoka's body. Before she could leave quietly, her handbag accidentally struck a flower vase beside the wall. The loud crash echoed through the hallway. "Who is outside there?" Pastor Samuel shouted angrily. Amoka hurried away quickly before anyone recognized her. That night, she could not sleep. The following Sunday, church members gathered for another miracle service. During prayers, Pastor Samuel moved powerfully through the congregation, touching foreheads dramatically. When he reached Amoka again, he stretched his hand toward her. Immediately, she stepped backward. A shocked murmur spread across the auditorium. Pastor Samuel's expression darkened. "You are fighting against spiritual authority," he declared loudly. But Amoka remained calm. Inside her heart, the warning became stronger than ever. After service ended, an elderly woman approached her secretly near the parking lot. "You must be careful," the woman whispered fearfully. Determined to uncover the truth, Amoka began investigating Pastor Samuel secretly. Using her business connections across Lagos, she spoke quietly with former church workers, security guards, and frightened ex-members who once served closely beside the pastor. What she discovered shocked her deeply. Several wealthy church members had disappeared mysteriously over the years. Families were told their relatives traveled abroad suddenly or relocated quietly after donating large amounts of money to the ministry. Yet nobody ever saw them again. One former choir member finally revealed the terrifying truth. Pastor Samoa performs secret rituals at night, the woman whispered fearfully. The miracles are not from God. Amoka's heart pounded heavily. A few nights later, she disguised herself in simple clothing and returned secretly to the church compound after midnight. Hidden behind parked vehicles, she watched several black SUVs enter through the rear gate. Powerful politicians, businessmen, and church leaders stepped out quietly carrying black bags. Amoka followed carefully until she reached a hidden underground room beneath the church auditorium. What she saw inside nearly destroyed her completely. Candles surrounded strange symbols painted across the floor. Animal skulls rested beside golden bowls filled with blood. Pastor Samoa stood at the center wearing a dark robe while chanting loudly before frightened followers. Suddenly, one church worker noticed movement near the doorway. "Someone is there," he shouted. Panic exploded inside the underground chamber. Amoka turned immediately and ran through the dark compound while several men chased after her angrily. Rain poured heavily across Lagos streets as she escaped through the church gate and entered a passing taxi. Breathing heavily inside the moving vehicle, Amoka realized the horrifying truth. Pastor Samoa was not a servant of God. He was using the church to hide dark. The following morning, Amoka knew silence was no longer possible. Innocent people remained trapped inside Pastor Samoa's dangerous deception, and more lives could disappear if nobody exposed the truth publicly. Using videos secretly recorded during her escape from the underground chamber, Amoka contacted investigative journalists and senior police officers in Lagos. At first, many doubted her story. Pastor Samoa was respected across Nigeria. Politicians attended his church regularly, celebrities donated publicly during services, and thousands believed he carried divine power. Still, Amoka refused to remain afraid. The next Sunday, the church auditorium overflowed with worshippers again. Pastor Samoa stood proudly on the altar wearing an expensive white suit while the choir sang loudly. Suddenly, police officers entered the church. Confusion spread immediately across the congregation. "What is happening?" members whispered nervously. Amoka walked calmly toward the altar beside several journalists carrying cameras. Pastor Samoa's confident smile disappeared instantly. "You lied to these people for years," Amoka declared boldly before the stunned congregation. "God never sent you." Gasps filled the auditorium. The recorded videos appeared on large church screens showing the underground rituals, strange symbols, and midnight gatherings hidden beneath the church. Several members began crying immediately. Others shouted angrily after realizing they had been manipulated through fear and fake miracles. Police officers arrested Pastor Samoa publicly while reporters captured every moment. As he was led away in handcuffs, he glared bitterly toward Amoka. "You destroyed everything," he hissed angrily. Amoka remained calm. "No," she replied quietly. "Truth destroyed your darkness." Weeks later, the underground chamber was permanently sealed, and investigations exposed years of fraud and criminal activities connected to it.
Hallelujah. Reach out to one another. Amen. Because this is our day of blessing.